Imagine a place where power comes from secrecy, where work gets done behind closed doors, and what you know is more important than who you are. This was the culture in post-Soviet Armenia. Then an American lawyer named Sara shows up, but she isn't alone. Her and her co-founders see a country being pulled back into the shadows by one strong man. So together they decide to build a space, not just any space. They built it with walls of glass so everyone could see what everyone else is doing. In a country built on secrets, they chose to be open. They believed that working together was real power. And a funny thing happened. These ideas inside those glass walls, the trust, the hope, the working together, they started to spill out onto the streets, and they helped fuel a peaceful revolution. So what happens when one simple workspace becomes a rehearsal room for a changing country? Our guest today is Sara Anjargolian, and we're about to hear how they did it. Let's get into the show. Hello, folks. It's yet another Co-working Values podcast. We're going to get right into it today because I'm really hungry and my wife's made dinner in the other room. So, Sara, what are you known for and what would you like to be known for?
Oh, gosh, what am I known for? Well, I'm known for as someone who is very involved and heavily invested in building the future Republic of Armenia.
That sounds really easy. So that sounds like what you're known for and what would you like. But you sound, geez, Sara, you sound really American. How can you build the Republic of Armenia like sounding like that?
Well, actually, I am speaking to you from the United States. I'm currently in Los Angeles, where my family is from and where I grew up. But I am ethnic Armenian. And so about 12 years ago, I moved to the Republic of Armenia, very different Republic of Armenia than it is today, because I was so interested in what was going on there. Former Soviet state that became independent in 1991. And there were the beginnings of civic activism and social movements. And I absolutely wanted to be part of it. And that's why I moved there.
Wouldn't it have been easier just to stay in where you were? Like that sounds a lot to take on in one go.
I didn't even think about it. I didn't even think about it as easy or hard. I thought about it as this is really, really interesting. I want to be part of it. And it was perhaps, maybe it was naive. I'm sure it was very naive and idealistic. I absolutely did not know the details of what I was going to get into, but I just needed to be part of it. And I'm a lawyer by education. And when I was watching the sort of political change in the country and the sort of, if I can call it, the fight for social justice, I just needed to be part of it because it was happening in real time as opposed to what one might read about, in their law books, etc.
So, I've got to find a way to get to it, so I'm going to ask a cheesy question. Gee, Sara, what made you open a co-working space in the middle of all this? Just to move the story along.
Okay, so I'm going to take issue with the word co-working in our case, because at the time we opened Impact Hub Yerevan in the capital of Armenia in 2015. And although we opened it within the larger Impact Hub network, there's over 100 Impact Hubs around the world, the idea was really more about bringing the best and brightest and people who cared about, social change and in Armenia under one roof to see what we could do, because we found ourselves in 2015 in a country that was very much on the path to authoritarianism, and it was not the country we wanted. So yes, it is a co-working space, meaning people do show up, sit at a desk and work, and they pay for memberships. But the way we built it at the time and continue to run it is as a nonprofit organization that is attempting to push forward social change in the country. So it was really kind of, how do we do this, in a sustainable way so that the organization sustains itself, but that we serve this larger mission.
That's what I'm really interested in, because I know, like, I didn't want to accuse you of being in co-working space, but
no, it's good.
The spaces I think add the most value to their local area, local environment, community, neighborhood, whatever you want to call it, are someone said the other day, Marina, that it's co-working so it's not like I just renting desks. And you hear people say this a lot. It's not just desks and Wi-Fi. There's all this other stuff that the more I do this, I just believe you have to have all that other stuff because that's the substance. So it's not that, I said before when we were talking about the Citizens book, it's not like, what am I going to get from this? It's like, what can I give to this? And just before we came on, you said we threw a load of people in a room together to see what would happen. And that is it for me. What happened when you threw all those people together?
Oh, wow. Well, first of all, in 2015-16 Armenia, nothing like that existed. And we built the space just to describe what the space looked like, the original space. We built it all with glass so everyone could see what everyone else was doing. And if you can imagine, this was really a shift in working culture in Armenia, where in a former Soviet state, you derive your power from secrecy in a lot of ways. And so we were turning that idea upside down and pushing forth that collaboration is actually power and sharing is power. And so just that was a shift in Armenia at the time. And so as we threw all these people together, when they kind of signed up to work from this space, in a way, they were signing up to a new philosophy of working together. And so it was wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful. I mean, it was only 500 square meter space when we started, and on one floor, and everybody could see what everybody else was doing, who everybody was meeting with, and just very slowly, people just started to collaborate, start projects. I remember there was this one wonderful project where 4 different members of the Impact Hub who would not see each other otherwise really started to collaborate on a project to empower some of the rural grape farmers. So if I could just quickly tell you about it, it was an architect, a winemaker, a crowdfunding platform. They came together and they said, what if we empower our grape farmers in the rural parts of Armenia, rather than just having the winemakers buy their grapes, actually build tasting rooms on their land and teach them how to sort of create these wonderful tasting experiences for people who might be traveling through Armenia. And that's what they did. And now today you can actually go to these farmers' lands and taste their wine as opposed to them just being sort of the folks selling the grapes. So that's just one example of things that happened there. People were just excited to learn about each other and kind of start working together. I'll stop there because I could go on and on about all the fun things that happened in those days.
I mean, so you fed me. So all the unfun things that happen, like something I've just as I've been researching for this podcast is, I just never knew how much horror that Armenia had been through. So, like you talk about going back in 2012 and then starting this thing there, and I imagine, I would just feel that there's a huge amount of trauma and purpose mixed together to get what you're talking about going. So, can you sort of give a brief history of the genocides and the wars and the revolutions that led to the point where you started the Impact Hub?
Yeah, well, I'll try. For your listeners who may not know about Armenia and the Armenian people, it's one of the oldest groups of people in the world. I mean, I'll throw out maybe just a few facts. So Armenia is currently located north of Iran, so borders Iran, Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. It's a small landlocked country. But the Armenian people have been around, for millennia. In fact, Armenia was the first country to adopt Christianity as its national religion. So in a lot of ways, Armenians are considered to be the first Christian nation. And a lot of people actually visit Armenia because of that. And some of the oldest versions of the Bible are actually written in the Armenian language. It's a very old Indo-European language. And when you refer to the genocide, World War I, the at the time Ottoman Turkish government in 1915 during World War I decided to dispel and basically annihilate its Armenian population. And so at that time, there was no Republic of Armenia because it was, the Armenians were living under the Turkish Ottoman state. And so 1.5 million Armenians in 1915 were killed and exterminated. And then the ones who survived became the current Armenian diaspora. And I am a grandchild of that legacy. My grandfather was a genocide survivor. He was a very young child at the time. And the reason I'm now in Los Angeles and the reason there are many Armenians, approximately 8 to 10 million Armenians living outside of Armenia, is because of the legacy of that genocide. So fast forward to and I'll try to get through this fast. It's a long history, but fast forward
this is fine. This
okay.
Really important.
So fast forward to 1991, the Soviet Union collapses during Gorbachev's time, and Armenia was one of the first former Soviet states to declare its independence from the Soviet Union, and it's now been independent since 1991 and gone through many, many difficult periods, including a war with neighboring Azerbaijan in the early 90s, and a second war, which is now where our Impact Hub comes in, a second war in 2020, again with neighboring Azerbaijan. And indeed, our Impact Hub went through, and the people of Armenia, including all of our people working at the hub, went through an extremely traumatic time in 2020. And I just want to remind folks that was also on the heels of COVID, when the world was so much more concerned, with dealing with COVID, that this war happened really in some ways outside of the international attention. And for about 44 days, Azerbaijan attacked the population of Nagorno-Karabakh, which was an ethnic Armenian population. And long story short, the ethnic Armenian population of Nagorno-Karabakh was dispelled, and now that land is under the control of Azerbaijan. So our Impact Hub was dealing with all of that during the war, and we turned from a co-working space in a lot of ways into almost a humanitarian center, trying to help not just our boys on the front lines fighting this war, but at the same time, all of the people who were displaced from their homes during the war. So I'm going to stop there because I could go on and on about it. But if people are, interested, you can find a lot online about the history of what happened.
Did you mention the Velvet Revolution in the middle of that?
I didn't, actually.
Yeah.
One of the high points of the country, and in fact, a high point for our space, for our Impact Hub, was 2018. Armenia was going down the path at the time of an authoritarian regime. I often will point to Belarus as being one of those. It was very much on that path within the shadow of being a satellite state, if I can call it that, of Russia. And the Armenian people had enough. And in 2018, we had what's called the Velvet Revolution. It's called that because not one person was, died during that revolution. It was very much a peaceful revolution where the former authoritarian regime gave way, if I can put it that way, resigned and gave way to a new government. And at the time, I actually was running the Impact Hub. I was the executive director of the Impact Hub, and we had many of the people who were on the streets were our members, myself included, basically screaming for change. And a new government was formed in 2018, 2019. And at that time, I actually left the Impact Hub, passed on the executive director role to my director of programs, and joined the government at the time. to try to build a new government. So all of a sudden, the country outside of the walls of Impact Hub started to espouse the same values as what we had been talking about inside the walls of our Impact Hub.
So I don't know where to go now. So there's a lot of, unrest, need for change, however you want to frame it around, I'm going to say the Western world at the moment, because do you know the website called Rest of the World?
No, tell me more.
There's a website called Rest of the World, because when we talk about tech, it's always whatever's happening in North America and Europe. And then there's this website that's dedicated to all the tech stories that are happening in the rest of the world, because, Europe and the US, and Europe and North America is, only a part of the world. But I'm just trying to get a question together of, like, after going through all that and running the Impact Hub, and like the line that kind of got me was, you said, like, what was happening inside our hub ended up happening in the country.
Yes.
And, if you're sitting in, California or London and you're running a co-working space, and we were talking about this in another podcast, it feels like I can't do anything, like the world is changing at 100 miles an hour, and, politics is everywhere. Everyone's divisive. And then with all that, this is where I'm going. Sorry, Sarah, it took me a bit.
That's okay.
You've got all of that experience, and there's people going through their own version of it, running a community hub or a co-working space, or whatever you want to call it. And I would argue that there's loads you can do, but it's very easy for me to say there's loads you can do and then leave it at that. But, like, what, with your experience, what do you think people could do? That's a huge question.
Well, you have to get involved. Okay. I don't buy, if I can be an American for a second, I don't know if you say this in Europe, but I don't buy it's too much. I don't know what I can do. It's overwhelming. It's, I'm just a small person in this big, I don't think that there, frankly, is much difference between those of us, if I can say, on the ground, and those people, in the various halls of power, right? We're all people, humans. And I just don't think that that we have much less power. There's really, in terms of being a human, we are all the same, sort of beings. And you have to get involved. Whatever it is that excites you, that makes you come alive in this larger, world, is where you should start. That would really be my, if you can call it, advice. Because the opposite is bad for the soul, right? If you just, it's better to be, sort of think about yourself and think about, what is it that makes you come alive, and work on that, as opposed to worry about, is this making an impact? I'm not sure if I articulated what I'm trying to say, but that's.
Yeah, the other thing that pops in my, because there's other co-working spaces that I've spoken to that have been through a lot like that. And then I see people, this is my opinion. I feel like they're being very performative about yes, we're making a big difference. And it's kind of like a marketing ploy rather than oh my God, we really need this place. Like, Mari in the other episode, in Puerto Rico, when she opened a co-working space and there was a hurricane and everyone dived into a co-working space, and that's what made the community. Whereas I, see people doing well-intentioned things, but it's all like they're very keen to tell you all the well-intentioned things they're doing, because it kind of creates this kind of, well-meaning place to be. And I wonder how much impact that does actually have, rather than when both you and Mari are like, if we weren't here, people would have nowhere to go.
Yeah, and actually, I listened to your episode with Mari, and when she was talking about all the changes that are happening in Puerto Rico and how their space has been very much part of that, I absolutely connected with that because in a lot of ways our space was really an extension of what was happening in the rest of the country. And by the way, it was very intentional. It wasn't like, okay, let's just open the doors and see who comes. It was, I'm going to reach out to this person because I see that they're doing something cool. They need to be part of our. It's like throwing a elaborate cocktail party, and you want to have the person who's going to be dancing on the table with a lampshade on their head, as well as the quiet person sitting in the corner building the next big, I don't know, tech company. It's like making a soup with all of these spices. And so we were very intentional about that. I remember making lists of people and organizations that at least, I had heard through the grapevine or had seen online doing interesting things, and constantly inviting people into that cocktail party, if I could put it that way. And I felt like Mari was also doing that in Puerto Rico.
That's how I do a lot of things, and I don't know where I learned it, but maybe it's just like sheer curiosity. I've got a reputation for like throwing people together and then leaving, and they end up they end up kind of finding their connection points, and bringing people together that may not have met anyway, and also, like you say, bringing the quiet person in because I'm quite loud and will like to think I'd be the one with the lampshade on their head, but also people like me put off quieter people, so you have to make a point of getting them in.
Absolutely.
That is great. Is there I've got like another 55 questions here, so you're going to have to come back, but is there anything I haven't asked you that you're dying to say, like you really want us to know?
Oh my goodness. Well, I guess for people who might be listening to this, who would like to start one of these spaces, I think that often, if I could give, I don't like the word advice, but if I could give a piece of advice maybe to people who want to start these spaces, I think oftentimes we get very excited about sexy spaces, and we'll say, oh, look at this gorgeous space with this light and these windows, and look at this gorgeous, let's put some desks together, etc. I would caution people not to fall in love with spaces, even though that's really important. When we had an incredible architect actually working with us when we started our space, and start very much with the people, and start with a boring Excel spreadsheet and get 20 or 30 people in an Excel spreadsheet that you can imagine in this space before doing anything and putting a down payment, on a new space. Because I think oftentimes co-founders will start from that end. And I think that we'll kind of get lost in the sort of loveliness of the space and lose sight of who actually is going to be there. And so I would kind of advise to start from the other end.
Bernie Mitchell endorses that message. What is? I've got to stop talking because that's exactly what I think. Where can we connect with you online and find you online and find the Impact Hub and all the other antics you're up to?
Yes, please. So, if you are in Armenia, or perhaps you should make it a point to travel to Armenia, as it's an incredible place, please come see us. So, by the way, we have 3 Impact Hubs now in Armenia. I didn't get to say that. So, the main Impact Hub, the mothership, if you can call it that, is at Impact Hub Yerevan, which is the capital of Armenia. Come visit us. We, at the moment, are in a building near the main train station, so we're very easy to find. And we also have 2 more Impact Hubs, Impact Hub Gyumri in the 2nd largest city in Armenia, and Impact Hub Syunik in the southern region of Armenia. So all of those Impact Hubs are alive and well and thriving, so please come and visit us. And you can find us just by Googling Impact Hub Yerevan. And people can find me on LinkedIn, as well as all of the other places, Instagram and Facebook and all that.
Ace, really appreciate your time. And we'll put a link to all those in the show notes, folks. And also I have to give a shout out to my friend Igor, who is from Space Spring, and he actually hooked us up here. And I really appreciate that because like I said to a few people in your Nazareth and other people, I've learned more about Armenia in the last 2 weeks than the whole of my life. And it's been amazing finding out the stories. So thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me. And now that you know more about us than you ever did before, it's time for you to come visit. So we invite you.
I'm booking my ticket now. So ladies and gentlemen, as always, if you go to the show notes, there's extensive show notes there. There's like 200 of these episodes now. We're going around the world, interviewing people, and our main message is about, co-working and citizenship, and that's all in the show notes too. Don't forget, wherever you are in the world, you can attend the Unreasonable Connection, which is lots of people like Sarah and other people that have been on this podcast, all in a room together, 4 people in a room, talking about the highs and lows of running a co-working space or some other kind of neighborhood community point. So wherever you are in the world right now, be careful out there. It is a jungle.